All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. I am your host, Lashina Williams, and so glad to be back here with you. And I'm thrilled to have Joe Tolliver joining us in a few. But before we get started, I just want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor. So this month's sponsor is Roots Art Store. If you're looking for personalized jewelry to show your loved ones appreciations, be sure to check them out, and we'll go ahead and drop that information in the chat box. Um, in case you missed it, we announced a special giveaway where our sponsor, Roots Art Store, and Nonprofit Enthusiasts will be collaborating. So make sure that you check that giveaway out. We'll drop that in the chat box, and you will win a Roots Art Store bracelet that says "Give Back," along with a $50 gift card to Amazon, Walmart, or Starbucks, wherever you choose. But here's how you participate. So first, you have to go to the link that we dropped in the chat box, and type "I'm in" for the giveaway. And we've seen a lot of responses there, so we can't wait to see your video. And then by June 23rd, you're going to record a 30-second video pitch about your nonprofit organization, highlighting the amazing work that you're doing, and share it in the group. So once you share it in the group, you'll go around and engage with at least 5 other videos. And from there, you're entered into the giveaway. The winner will be announced at the end of the month. So you definitely don't want to miss that. So that's your friendly reminder. For those of you that said "I'm in," you have about 1 week to go ahead and drop your video, your 30-second elevator pitch into the group. And we did a video a couple weeks ago. Make sure you check that out with some tips on that elevator pitch and how you can improve upon it and so forth. So make sure that you check that out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I am so excited to have Joe Tolliver join us once again. For those of you who have met him, I'm going to share a little bit on his background. He has served as the Vice President of Philanthropy and Communications for the Urban League of Broward County. He had the opportunity to oversee operations for marketing, public relations, and community building. He was also responsible for fund development and lead staff for the Urban League $8.5 million capital campaign to build a new 28,000 square foot community empowerment center. And prior to his role at Urban League, he was with the United Way of Broward County as the Director of Grants Administration. Joe was responsible for managing the Edward Byrne JAG Memorial Grant Program and award process, which included helping grantees with fiscal sustainability and program accountability. The grant provides $1 million annually, and in 2009, $3.5 million in federal stimulus funds. We are so excited to be joined by Mr. Tolliver once again.
How you doing?
Hey.
Good to be here.
Good. How are you?
Man, that was a long.
It's always good to be on with you.
Where did you?
I know. I was like, "Who I read the whole thing too."
I know you start past all the stuff that I'm currently doing. You didn't mention any of that.
I just.
Yeah, that's the good part.
So let's talk about some of that. So what you're currently doing here with us at Nonprofit Enthusiasts. I just wanted to tee it up, get it ready so that when you come on, we can just continue with
what I'm doing at Nonprofit Enthusiasts is really trying to build this whole community of folks who are working in the nonprofit industry to strengthen their capacity so they can reach their passions. What we do at Nonprofit Enthusiasts is try to connect structure with passion. So we don't want you to lose your personal identity, but we want you to have all the tools so you can be successful. Therefore, if you're successful, that means some of our passions, the folks at Nonprofit Enthusiasts, passions get realized as well. So that's what we do over there at Nonprofit Enthusiasts. Everything from starting out, filing for your 501c3 to helping you build your grant boilerplate to doing community-based presentations and training on fund development and some of the things that we're doing here on live. So it's been, and it still continues to be very interesting work. We get to touch the people and interact with the folk in many different ways. And I'm just glad to be here today with you, Lashina, to share a little bit about fund development, marketing, and also I think we're going to touch a little bit on PR. And so you mentioned a lot of those organizations that I worked for in the past. And each of them
Yep.
come with a story that I could share with you in regards to how we had to interact those specific tools in our fund development overarching strategies.
Love it, love it. Yes, that's exactly what I want to talk about. And I had to share that background as well, because here at Nonprofit Enthusiasts, I want you all to know that we have the things that we share with you all, we lived it. Whether it's through direct services, working as a funder, overseeing programs, Joe's previous experience as director of grant administration. So a lot of the things we share on an ongoing basis, we've lived it. And we're glad to be able to share this information with you all to help you grow your organization to the next level. So today, yes, this month's theme is marketing and public relations. We've been talking about this all month, and where I want us to talk a little bit about, Joe, and kind of focus in on is the connection between that marketing and public relations and donor management, fund development, and the importance, because sometimes we can easily look at it as a separate thing. The resource development team, the marketing team, they're doing their thing, but the importance of marketing and public relation when it comes to that donor cycle, that fund development cycle, and cultivating relationships with donors. So maybe we could start there, and then I'll ask some questions as we go through. And if you're tuning in and have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box and I'll read them out.
Sounds good. So when you talk about marketing as it relates to fund development, really both are about telling your story, right? In fund development, you really have to be able to tell your story in order for people to have a real interest in you, to even have a will to even understand what your organization's mission is. And so they all work together. How they interconnect, I would share with you that when I did work at the Urban League of Broward County, one of the things that I was tasked was that $8.5 million capital campaign to build a community empowerment center. When I got to the Urban League, they had already done what they call the quiet phase of the capital campaign, where they had raised already $1.7 million. A part of our strategy in terms of helping people understand why there was a need. So I'm in fund development, but I'm also over communications. A part of my job was to help people understand why we needed a community empowerment center, why we needed it to be there in the place that we were going to build it, and then how important that was to the actual person who was going to be the donors, how that benefited the donors. And a part of our strategy was really to bring these corporations and some of their key gatekeepers at these who could really make decisions and bring them on what we coined as an urban tour of the Sixth Trunk Corridor. So we developed a tour to take these corporations on a newly developed corridor. There was some redevelopment going on. They were redoing the streets. They were, for the first time, adding fiber optics to that community where they can get internet. So all of these things were going on. And the CRA had millions and millions of dollars to help with redevelopment. So all of this is going on simultaneously. As we're saying, we have a growing community and we have all this infrastructure that's going on the capital side of it. But what about the social side of it? What about the people? What about the community and the folks who are currently living there? And that's where this community empowerment center came into play. So we developed this tour, and we would get a van and we would schedule folks from Publix, Walmart, all of these big bucket stores and franchises in hopes that they would not only give to the capital campaign, but there would also be a catalyst for them to now invest in our community. And so there was a lot of challenges with both of those organizations in terms of coming to our community and in giving to a project, because we were going to host or house a training component so we could better build folks up in that community to then be able to go and work at those organizations and be productive employees and use that as a part of that corporation's onboarding process. So I must have done about 200 tours. And yes, Walmart came to that community. Yes, Publix came to that community and they gave to our capital campaign. And one of our biggest givers that gave $2 million, which was the um, who named our building, was Sunshine Help, who's also known as Centene. So all of that came about because we wanted to do something strategic around public relations. We wanted to make sure that folks understood why we needed this building, why it needed to be there, and how it could really make a serious impact, plus the benefits it was going to create for those organizations. And the benefit is that you now have trained people to come in, not just as clerks, but as managers, right? Not just on the low end level jobs, but on all aspects of the organization. And it really has benefited that community a lot. And I'll give you an example. I'll get a little bit, Southern on you, where you would go to the local produce place and you would buy a bundle of collard greens, which is in this particular area was a common meal, a common vegetable that folks cook with. You're spending $5-6, whereas Walmart, which is 5 miles out of your radius, you could get it for $2.49. So that was the distinction of why the need was there. Mm-hmm. And so those are the type of things how you're doing your fund development activities, but you're also creating a public relation. You're developing your brand about who you are and what you're trying to do in your community, all at the same time. They all interact with one another. So that's my story there about a little bit about dealing with public relations and dealing with fund development and capital campaigns, which is a very unique thing. Because once we went out of the quiet phase of it, we went into what they call the loud phase, where we're now starting to put out the fact that we're getting ready to build this building. And that's when the tours happened, which was very productive in terms of our fund development activities.
So with the tours, because a lot of times, let's say you want potential donors or stakeholders to come out to your organization, but everyone has busy schedules. What role do you think marketing and public relations played in them accepting the tours? Like, for instance, maybe Publix was familiar with, the Urban League ahead of time because of brand and other things. Like, what role would you say that played in because you said you did about 200 tours and getting people to respond and make time on their schedule to come out and see what you're doing in action?
Well, I think it's a lot of planning out. It's first developing the tour. What makes sense? What's going to tell the story that's going to make the most impact? That was number one. Number two, deciding who was going to be a part of the tour. What helped was that quiet phase. When in that quiet phase, you had big donors giving millions of dollars. And one of those donors that gave the millions of dollars was enough to be able to open doors for other folks to even have the conversation. So that's why that quiet phase of a capital campaign is so important. One of the reasons why it's so important, because now you're building up your credentials, so to say, in terms of, okay, you got this major company that's willing to give, maybe we should listen. Or maybe that major company may have maybe your sphere of influence where they're making the connect points for you and inviting folks to come on the tour. So maybe it's not even you. In many cases, it was not me. It was members on the board that we had, sphere of influence, that helped me get those folks on the tour. So those
that's
are
awesome. That's like word of mouth marketing. Oh, sorry.
Well, it's fundraising. All that was fundraising.
Yep,
fundraising. We talked about a lot on this platform, but true enough, that was fundraising. We tapped into the board. Why your board is so important: time, talent, and treasure. And then we were able to utilize their sphere of influence to invite these folks who are key players at these corporations, who can really make decisions at these organizations, and get them to agree to come on this tour. Once we get on the tour, now they get a chance to kind of see what we're promoting, not just through a sponsor packet, not through just a letter. They get to actually put their hands on to be able to get a real feel of what the community. Now, what I found that was most interesting, we didn't limit ourselves to corporations. We were taking all sorts of groups because there were so many different people who needed to understand the why. Some folks who had lived in that community for years did not understand why until they experienced the tour.
Wow.
So it was a very unique experience. We had everybody from fraternities to sororities to community health centers. We even had teachers who were applying to go on to be principals come do the tour, because if they got assigned at schools that were in these communities, they needed to understand what this community was. So it benefited them in that way. How it benefited us, they became champions for the work that we did. And a part of our capital campaign, some of them bought bricks in front. You know, where we were looking for $2 million gifts from same team, we were also just as humble and honored to receive those $200 bricks that folks were donating their money to get their name on. That wasn't just as important, because those folks are now champions of our organization and they know who we are. We're not the best kept secret in the community. Not only do they know we're there, but they know what we're about. And that was important for us as well when you talk about marketing and public relations.
I love that. And I just love how you kind of showed that picture of the connection between going through that capital campaign, but also the importance of what marketing, that fundraising was in order for that to be a successful campaign for you all.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you can do it. I mean, in terms of fund development, but there's other ways too, you know, in terms of your programming. How do you put your programming on front, right? So if part of your initiatives is about health, for example, and then you are in a center of your community and you're touching people in that area, why not do your data, do your research, and be able to come up with what your community says the issues are, and be able to communicate that to the folks who can make a difference, who can make a change, whether that is through programming or through advocacy. And that is another way that public relations, because now your brand is out there, not only to the communities, hey, look, we're coming out here and asking you questions about your community. And now we're going to take those questions we ask and formulate a publication so that we can educate the people who provide you services so they can better do that. So those are ways that you can tap into marketing and public relations. Now they know us, the community, as advocates for them. And then the folks who are providing the service, they see us as a resource. And so those are tools that you can use in terms of marketing, public relations, and even fund development. You know why? Because we were able to get a sponsor to pay for that publication.
That's awesome.
So that's spinning it all the way back around, right? And to get you right back to the core things, that everything really is going to have to be about marketing and public relations. And all your core values in your programs, you need marketing and public relations. Your fund development activities, you need it. Your financial activities, you need it. So there are so many different ways that you're going to need to market and brand yourself and do good PR. Because if you don't do good, what happens when you have a challenge? If there's a risk that happens that you need to mitigate, here's PR again, right? You may have to reintroduce yourself. So those are really key. Public relations is really key to nonprofits. And many times with small nonprofits and medium-sized nonprofit, they oftentimes put marketing and public relations on the back burner. It's the last thing that they think of. And they only focus in on maybe some of the more easier tasks that are associated with marketing, which is the social media, trying to brand. And not to say that those are not good tools, but they're not the only ones. Your marketing strategies have to be comprehensive, and they also have to be intentional based on the activities that you're doing. So you just can't throw a bunch of stuff on Instagram and think it's going to land. It's going to get everything that you need about yourself across. You have to have a real strategy and put it into play. And that takes time. And it also takes money. And so sometimes these small and nonprofit, not only do they put it on the back burner in terms of operational, but they also put it in the back burner in terms of their budget. And so I often ask and suggest that small to medium nonprofits look at a percentage rate of their total budget of how much they're going to invest in their marketing activities. So if you're a large, big bang, big box, nonprofit organization or social entrepreneurship, you might want to look at upwards to 19 to 20% of your budget going towards marketing and PR activities. If you're smaller, you may want to do half, but you got to have some dollars allocated to your marketing PR budgets and be very intentional. It should coincide with your program logic model. It should coincide with your fund development strategies. Your marketing and your PR should. But if you don't have those two things, then you might be a little bit in trouble.
Love it, love it. And I love that you're talking about how marketing and public relations intertwine not just in resource development, but in your program throughout your entire organization. It's important to connect them and not see them as separate entities because I mean when you really think about it, the marketing and public relations team can't just stand alone because they need the stories from the other teams to be able to take and share using the different
Absolutely.
strategies and tactics in the community.
So those are the things
So
like.
what?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. And I had a question.
I want to hear this question. I'm ready.
Really?
Yes.
No, because then it's gonna change the whole conversation. And
No,
then
it won't. Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm ready.
Okay. That was me buying time as I remember the question. Okay, so for a smaller for a smaller organization that's tuning in, and I like to ask this question because we have different size organizations that tune in, and they might not necessarily have the budget. They might be starting outwards, just that one person or the couple of people who's wearing multiple hats. They're the program marketing team. They're doing a little bit of everything. What are some cost-effective tips that you would have for them to be able to tell their story and begin building in the marketing, public relations, and in these areas?
First and foremost, be intentional, right? Look at your programming and be targeted about what you're going to market because you want to get the most bang for the buck. So if you're going to invest in marketing activities and PR activities, figure out where you can get the most value at and target in on that. Invest in that instead of trying to generalize your strategies, pinpoint and be very specific in terms of what you want to market and what you want to brand. At the same time, kind of bringing in your overall brand, but being very specific. For case in point, if you know that you have a grant and it is making up no more than 30% of your budget, up to 30% of your budget, then you know that that's where you need to invest your marketing strategy. A couple of things. First of all, you got to use it for recruiting, right? Folks got to understand you got to recruit. Secondly, you got to use it to allow other organizations to know that you're doing it. So maybe you need a place that you need to house your program. Other investors need to be able to, grant awards opportunities come when they know who you are. Oh, I've seen that organization on Instagram, or I see that they're giving a conference. I know that they're doing this work. So those are different ways that you can strategize, but it all boils down to you got to pinpoint where you can best spend your money, where it is a priority to grow your organization, because you never ever want to be the best kept secret in your community, not only just in your community in terms of the people that you serve, but also the people who could actually help you do the work that you want to do. Potential donors, funders.
Love it. Any other tips before we close out for today that you have on this month's topic of marketing and public relation? And then also we have our a giveaway happening with our 30-second pitch coming up. So if you have any tips as organizations prepare for this pitch, as we wrap up today, anything you got?
Yeah, make sure you breathe.
I don't do that.
And tell your story. Be authentic as you can.
Yep.
Breathe, tell your story. But also, I'm a firm believer that you do not tell your story without your supporting data, and you do not share your supporting data without your story. I could not do the work that I did when I worked at these national affiliated organizations, because if I'm in communications and I'm in fund development, my stories are in programs. So if I'm not constantly connecting to my program folks to get these stories or to help them build a case for stories, right? Because sometimes the stories are there, you just don't know how to tell it, right? If I'm not doing that kind of communications, cross communications, some of us, we're doing it all, but we have to think that way, right? Then I'm missing. I can't do both. I can't tell my story. And if I'm not actively talking to the folks in my community, if I'm just serving them and I'm not asking them questions, I'm not tapping in and evaluating how they see things, then how can I be able to effectively tell the story about the impact that I'm doing in that community? So that would be, I guess my closing thoughts would be that.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's
I can't
always a
believe
pleasure
we're
to
done
have you
already.
on.
Like I'm just ready for like 5 or
Yeah,
6 more questions.
really?
Yeah, no, just kidding. It's been fun though.
Oh, you're so funny. We'll save those questions for the next month's thing
Absolutely.
when you come
Absolutely.
back on.
Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you.
Before I go,
All
Lucina,
right.
was there
So
any
yeah.
questions in the chat for me?
I don't see any questions. I see more of the tips. So cultivating relationship with donors, um, using fundraising, our favorite topic of fundraising for word of mouth marketing. Um, uh, let's see what some other stuff. Cost effective tips for small and medium nonprofits. Be intentional and be specific. Oh, we got some comments. Thank you, saying thank you. Powerful speech.
Oh boy. You're welcome.
Awesome. Um, what classes are allowed? I see that question. If you could just elaborate on that a little more. So you all know we're in this new system, right? Oh, here we go. Look at that. I could pull the questions up on the screen. Um,
Oh boy.
if you can elaborate a little bit more on what classes are allowed. Here's it. What classes are allowed for community outreach?
Classes for community outreach. I think you would find that under community building or community development.
Yeah, for community outreach programming. If you could I think you need a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah.
Give us a little basic skills. Tell us a little bit more so that way we can help. Okay, I see it coming in. I'm going to read it in a second. I'll read them together as they come in. Okay, hold on.
For programs for outreach, you definitely have to have your network. I always say that a lot of when you're working with youth programs, a lot of times your best advocates are schools and churches in terms of hosting. And then also partnering with other organizations who may not, say for instance, if you have a summer program and they may not have enough programming dollars to have 50 kids, but only 25 kids, and maybe you could come on with your programming dollars and do the other 25. So there's ways that you can connect. But it is about building a relationship, not necessarily when you need them, but along the way, thinking ahead.
Okay, here we go. All right, I think I got it. So let me read them out. So the question is, and I'm going to read it. So pretty much, what classes are allowed for community outreach programming, like basic life skills? What topics like parenting, AA, computer, wellness classes I can have at my resource center? I get grants, but need more topics to serve. And I want to recommend one of the best places before we make recommendations that we share a lot to start is with developing a logic model. So that would that would help provide clarity as to what problems you have in the community. So that way, when you're creating different topics and different community classes, they're meeting the needs of your community. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, and you
On
can
that,
you
Joe?
can do that by hosting focus groups. You could do that by talking to other organizations who work within that community, and then just having direct conversations with people who live there. A lot of times we think we know what a community needs, but until we ask them, then we really don't know. And and like Lashina shared, a logic model is the best thing. You identify what the problem is, right? What contributes to those problems, and then you come up with strategies you believe your organization can actually do to make an impact on those problems. And once you have the strategies, you can develop specific actions, right? that go along with those strategies in terms of implementing those programs. And then the most important part is, if you did all those actions based on those strategies, what do you expect to get at the end? And that's when you actually look at your particular outcomes, and that's your evaluation plan. If you begin to look at your programming like that, then you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. That helps you also to be able to market, because now you know exactly what your program is trying to accomplish. And you could be able to tell that story very specific, very clear, with intention, because you now have this logic model. That logic model not only helps you with your marketing, but it also, you can give that to a grant writer, especially if you get a grant boilerplate, which we do for organizations at Nonprofit Enthusiasts, by the way. You can then give that to a grant writer, and then they can begin looking for grants that fit the work that you want to do and you believe that you can do. Those are important tools. That's how you kind of determine what types of programs and advocacy that you need to do. And I bring advocacy up because most times we think that making impact in our community is limited to just programming. Oftentimes, it's not just programming that's going to ultimately make an impact on that community in that particular situation or challenge. It's a combination of programming and advocacy, right? Sometimes there's rules, regulations, laws, ordinances that impact that particular community and the things, the challenges they are faced. A programming alone sometimes just won't do it. But you'll be able to identify that when you're developing your logic model. And a logic model merely is a theory of change, how you plan to make a change in your community.
Love it. And I know, and I see a legacy development. Some of the additional questions is: do you think prayer boards, vision boards, and paint for empowerment? I advocate for intellectual disabled adults. What I'm gonna do is let's schedule some time to dive into, so we can know more, because there's a lot of follow-up questions we're gonna have before we can make recommendations. So I'm going to drop that into the chat right now.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, what you got?
All those folks who have those questions, you could drop it in, we could do whatever, but they could also take advantage of our 15-minute consult.
Yep, and I'm dropping that link right in the chat right now. Yep. The best thing to do, is to schedule that time so we can get to know your organization. And from there, we'll be able to make recommendations, kind of talk a little bit more about your particular organization, like what ages you serve, what is your existing program. Like, there's a lot of follow-up questions that we'll have in order to be able to help make some additional recommendations for your particular organization.
It'll be myself or either Lashina that you'll talk to.
Yep. Yeah.
If you want
schedule some time. Okay.
If you want quick and easy, it's Lashina. If you want long-winded,
you're so funny.
But you'll get the same impact.
Awesome.
The same thing.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Good. So we'll look out for you to schedule that call. Awesome. Anything else before we head out today? This was a really good conversation. I'm so glad that we talked about marketing and public relation and its connection across the organization, not just in its own area, and the importance of the marketing team knowing the stories of fund development, different areas, resource development team and other teams throughout, in order to be able to help share that story. So anything else before I head out? Before we head out? Before we head out today, Legacy Development said, "Glad I need you both. We are here for you. We got you. That's what we're here for. Yep. Our mission is to combine your passion with structure. So that's what we're here for, to help support you on your journey. So, and not just for you. So anyone if you're tuning in and you're like, I have more questions, or I want to know more, go ahead and schedule that consult using that link that I dropped into the chat box. All right. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you once again, Joe. We'll see you next month. It's always a good time when we're
I'll see you before next month, but that'd be great.
No, you're gonna see me before next month. See you on live before next month. Here we go.
Thank you guys. It's been a real pleasure. Look forward to seeing you next month.
All right, awesome. Bye everyone.